Hear the words of Scripture from Matthew. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If any wish to come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life?" The words of God for the people of God.
We're going to spend the next several weeks in Mark's Gospel, in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, which is very discipleship-oriented, which is very there's 3 sections of the 10th chapter of Mark, that's just like, this is what I want you to do. This is what followers of Jesus Christ should do in this world. And to open that time that we spend together, I wanted us to go back to this passage. This passage is right in the middle, right in the heart of the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus has fed the 5,000. Jesus has fed 4,000. Jesus has been challenged by disciples and Pharisees alike. And for the first time, at least in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus starts talking about, we got to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to be handed over. I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to die. And Peter says, "No, you're not on my watch." And Jesus says, "Peter, get out of my way." And then we get this section. To open up our a series that's kind of closely related to one another about how to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, how to actually follow Jesus. And I was reading something this week. You know who Chapel Roan is? Some of you are not going to be ready for Chapel Roan, but your kids are going to love it. Your grandkids already love it. Chapel Roan is a pop star. That's a name, by the way. Chapel Roan is a name. She's a pop star, #1 in the world this week, actually, for the first time in her career. But she is the pop star of the moment. And she got in a little bit of trouble a few weeks ago online in this political sphere that we are in right now because she refused to endorse Kamala Harris. So she's built like this image, and her whole pop star persona is inclusive and very out and proudly left-leaning and progressive, and the people who are following her, who were on that side of the political spectrum, were waiting for an endorsement to come, and she refused to give it. And even after she says online, I finally, after a few days of, this is actually none of your business, just listen to my songs. But eventually she does say, yes, I'm voting for Kamala, but endorsing is something completely different. And you're asking me to put this thing that I've built, this professional entertainment corporation, this name that I have built behind one party, and particularly this iteration of the Democratic Party. I'm not going to do that. And supporters of Kamala Harris were very upset about that. And she said, I don't care, basically. She responded great, and I thought it was just it was a very we're supposed to be doing this kind of response. Of course, I am staunchly opposed to some of the political policies on the one side, but also the other side also has some terrible policies that has hurt my community over and over and over again, and I'm not going to put my name behind that. Okay, so underneath that, I was reading the comments section, which you're never actually supposed to do, right? And someone said that this whole thing was happening because Harris followers aren't as passionate about their candidate as the other side. And we're not going to go down that road. What I was struck with was the word followers. And the use of the word followers in this particular sense. I hope that no one in this room is a follower of Vice President Kamala Harris. Or anyone. I hope that you do not refer to yourself as a follower of any politician in this world. I think it's telling that this person used that language towards but we don't follow politicians. We are supporters of. It's a completely different thing. We are first and foremost followers of Jesus Christ. And I wanted to spend this month, these weeks before this presidential election comes down to it, reminding ourselves that we are first and foremost followers of Jesus Christ, disciples of, students of Jesus Christ. So what do we mean by that? Disciple literally means student. There's no trick of language here. There's no mistranslation out of Greek and into Latin and through German and into disciple means student of, pupils of Jesus Christ. It always has. It has always been used in that context, which is interesting to me because we have taken what Jesus says at the end of Matthew, go and make disciples of all the world, as this kind of banner-carrying Christendom, convert all of the non-believers call. And if Jesus wanted to say that, he would have said that. But he said, go and make disciples of all the world. Go and teach people what I taught you. We've taken that Great Commission, is what we call it. And what if Jesus meant students of and not converts to Christianity? Christianity didn't exist when Jesus said that, by the way. It wasn't a thing yet. If he wanted to say believers, there's a word for that in Aramaic and in Greek. It's a different word. If he wanted to say church members, there's a word for that. If he wanted to say converts, there's a word for that. I mean, if he said disciples, he meant disciples. Students, go and teach the other people what I have taught you throughout the whole world. Because Jesus never asked for worship. Jesus never says in any of the Gospels, bow down and worship me. Jesus didn't ask for defense or for banners or for Christendom or for a Christian nationalist movement, any sort of Christian nations, anywhere. Jesus said two things. When it comes down to Jesus telling people what to do and how to live their lives, and when it comes down to Jesus commanding people how to live in the name of your love for Jesus, Jesus said two things. Take care of other people and follow me. Jesus commanded us two things. Take care of other people, take care of each other, and follow me. That's it. And I think there are a lot of ways, there are a lot of different ways to come to Jesus, to find Jesus, to access Jesus. There's a lot of different ways to do church that are healthy and varied and different. There are a lot of different ways to worship Jesus, and there's a lot of different styles, and some people are going to love old hymns played on an organ, and some people are going to love slow jam, R&B, early 90s, power pop ballad, Crucified with Christ. And some people aren't. There are a lot of people, different ways to worship Jesus. But I think following Jesus is actually pretty straightforward when we come down to it. Go where I go and do what I do. I'm reminded of this moment in later in the New Testament, and Paul is talking to the church in Corinthians, and it goes, so some of you are saying that you're followers of Apollos, and some of you are saying that you're followers of Mary, and some of you are saying that you're followers of Paul. No, you're not. There are no followers of Paul. We are disciples of Jesus Christ. I think there are actually a lot of followers of Paul in the Christian church these days. I think following is pretty straightforward. Jesus was radically kind in his day-to-day. No, let the kids come. Let the kids come join us. Don't toss them out. Let them come forward. Which one of you touched my cloak? He's in the middle of a packed crowd and stops everything because a woman touched his cloak to be healed. And he stops the whole thing to find out which one it was. Zacchaeus, get out of the tree, man. Let's go have dinner. Like, Jesus is just radically kind throughout his travels. Jesus is fiercely inclusive. He ate with sinners and tax collectors. We know that. These are the outcasts of the social circle. They didn't actually, they wouldn't have had dinners for the most part. They would eat while they were working. They would eat throughout the day. And Jesus sat down and was across the table from them. There's the woman who's facing execution from the mob, and he stopped everything and said, I think what he was really saying when he said, let anyone who is without sin throw the first stone. In that moment, Jesus was saying, why aren't we stoning any of the men that are accused? She's accused of adultery, so we're stoning her in this town square, but who was she adulterous with? Radically and fiercely inclusive. And Jesus, being radically kind and fiercely inclusive, also called out injustice and hypocrisy. Whenever he saw it, he flipped over the tables, he confronted the Pharisees. This comes after a moment of confrontation with the Pharisees, where they tried to test him again about give us a sign to prove who you are. And Jesus takes his disciples away and says, deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. So it comes down to it where Jesus has spoken in proverbs and metaphors and parables this whole time. And it gets to this moment right before what we read today, where he asks Peter, who am I to you? And Peter says, you are the Messiah. And then the next sentence is, okay, so we got to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to be arrested, and I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to be executed. And Peter's like, no way. Peter, 5 minutes before, Peter says, you are the Messiah. And then 10 minutes later, Jesus okay, I'm going to be executed. That's part of this whole thing. And Peter's like, no, never going to happen. And so finally, Jesus is like, listen up, dummies. Self-denial, take up your cross, follow me. It comes down to it. We got 3 simple steps to following Jesus Christ. Deny self, take up their cross, which is interesting language. Jesus does not say, take up my cross. He says, take up their cross, your cross, and follow. Of course, self-denial, especially Jesus' call to deny yourself, has been used in abusive ways and has been used as a means through which oppression is done. We come out of it, we are still coming out of a church tradition where church leadership and church and preachers and pastors want docile church members, controllable church members. Let me go back to when the church was the church and had its hands in everything and was taxing people, and they wanted people that they control. So they would call up, well, Jesus says, deny yourself. Jesus says being humble is the most important thing that you can possibly do. So it, of course, has been used that way. And you know who's actually really, really bad at denying themselves? The Christian church. The Christian church still seems to make everything all about themselves. I'm 42 years old. I'm deeply connected in the United Methodist Church for 32 of those 42 years, and we've been trying to save the church that whole time. Probably longer. We've been talking about saving the church since 1970, but because people are leaving. It's not a backdoor problem. People aren't departing from the church. People aren't coming in the front door. But here's the thing. I don't think following Jesus has very little to do with the church. And my generation and those younger than us are following Jesus out the door of the church. We come from a generation of very, very well-trained Christians. In the 90s, in the late 80s, church was big. Church was a thing. And we were taught the ways of Jesus Christ and the way of recognizing them. And it's not that we're not seeing that in the organized Christian church anywhere. We have younger generations, for the most part. They're not giving up on Jesus. They're not walking away from faith. They are following Jesus so closely and so faithfully that they're not experiencing Jesus Christ in the church anymore. And take up your cross. Take up not my cross, Jesus says, and that's interesting language. But we need to remember that the cross is always bad to Jesus. We've made it, the theology and Christology and atonement theory, we've made, Jesus didn't want it. There is no instance in the Gospels where Jesus is like, this is a good thing. Jesus did not want to go to the cross. I am going to be executed, he said, over and over and over and over again. This is something that is necessary, but not a good thing. There's never an instance in the gospel when the cross is good. It is a symbol of oppression. It is a symbol of sacrifice for integrity, sacrifice for the people, for his community. When he said, are you a king or are you not a king? He said, I mean, you're saying the word king. It's not me. And it's very interesting that Jesus says that we are supposed to deny ourselves and take up our cross and not his cross. If you know the phrase, that's my cross to bear, right? Which is when someone basically wants you to know how humble they are in their life, and wants to brag about how deep their faith is in the midst of suffering. They say, I guess that's just my cross to bear. We're using that wrong. They would have known, the disciples, that the cross wasn't the literal cross. It wasn't put together yet. Right? You don't pick up a whole cross. You are lashed to the crossbar. And to pick up your cross, you would be tied to the railroad tie across your shoulders, which would then be attached to the post and put up. But that doesn't make it into our pageants, because it looks cooler when you're carrying a whole cross. But the disciples would have known that living in Rome. And so when Jesus says that you have to deny yourself and take up your cross, they would have had the image in their heads of prisoners being tied to this crossbar and walking towards their execution. So what does it mean to follow Jesus Christ? To be disciples of Jesus? I spent 10 years in the MCU. We had this picture up of Captain America. I spent 10 years of my life in the MCU before Endgame came out, and nothing will ever match the experience of a comic book fan in their 30s going through what the MCU did from Iron Man in 2008 to Avengers Endgame in 2018. There will never be anything like this moment, and it all built up to. We have this shot, Lorinda, of Captain America. It's gone now. We have this shot. They spent 10 years building to this moment. That one guy over there in the light is Captain America. And he is facing the entire collective armies of the bad guys. And he is ready. He's ready to go. The big bad is standing there. His armies are behind him. These giant jackal, snake, dog flying alien ships. Like, he couldn't take one of those, and there's like 12 of them. And Captain America like squares his shoulder, sets his feet, and he's ready to charge. And then all these portals show up. It's a comic book movie. All these portals show up, and then all the good guys come through the portals. But Cap was ready. Cap was ready and willing, and he was running. He was starting to charge against this clearly impossible situation. And I think that's kind of that's the kind of follow me that Jesus is talking about. I don't believe in any of that God won't give you more than you can handle stuff. But Jesus doesn't ask us to go through anything he wouldn't go through first. What if When Jesus says, "Follow me," it doesn't mean I'm in charge and do what I say that preachers have made it into. But Jesus meant, I know where we're going, and I know how to get there. So stay with me, I'll go first, and we'll get there together.